All right, so now recording part 4 of our walk cycle animation assignment in computer animation. And what we're going to do now is we're going to animate the back leg of this walk cycle animation. Let's preview where we left off. So we're going to go into animating the back leg, just copying some frames. We're also going to separate the arm and kind of animate the arm swinging back and forth, and also the head tilting, so that we really create a full body kind of animation of a walk cycle. So what we're going to do to start is actually take some frames and we're going to copy them and paste them from our front leg to our back leg. So really all we need to do is take this first frame here from this kind of start of the series of these 5 shoes, these 5 keyframes in a row on their descent. We're going to hold shift and click on the last keyframe there, and then we're going to just take those, we're going to right click, we're going to go copy frames, go down to your back leg layer, right click again, and then we're going to paste frames. Okay, a couple extra frames got added at the end, but we'll take those out later. Then what we're going to also do is take the first frame of the front leg layer and go to the frame just before this series of the 5 in a row here, and we're going to take that whole group and we're going to right click, we're going to copy frames, we are going to skip a frame here, so they should be right in line with this beginning of the 5 here, and we will go down ahead and paste those frames. Now what we can do at the end is kind of trim out these extra frames here, so we'll select those and we'll go to remove frames. Okay, so now what we should have as a result is 2 legs walking in a good walk cycle. Now something I do notice is that one foot, the back foot, actually slides underneath the front foot. So we're going to take a quick second to adjust that. What we want to do first is lock all the layers by clicking on the lock icon above our layers palette. And we're going to just unlock the back leg. Okay, so this one layer is unlocked. What we're going to use is a tool right here in our timeline bar called Edit Multiple Frames. So we're going to click on that button, and what we're going to want to do is you might have a bar that appears here on the top that might be small. Okay, so this is going to allow us to edit as many frames that are within these 2 brackets. So if I take and slide this bracket all the way to the end, that means it'll allow me to edit all of these frames that also only happen to be on this back leg layer, because all these other frames are locked. Okay, so taking just my arrow tool, my selection arrow tool, I'm going to click and drag and make a box that encompasses all of those feet. Okay, so now I've got all those feet selected that are all the back legs on that timeline on that particular layer, and what I'm going to do is just nudge them upwards on my keyboard. Okay, now I can see that this back foot position is slightly higher, so I know I am pretty good there. I think I nudged it about 4 times to kind of raise it up just a little bit. And that, I think, should probably do it. Maybe I'll move it out just a little bit, but I'm noticing I may need to adjust my shirt a little bit so it actually comes in front of that space. So let's give this a quick preview again before exiting multiple frames mode. And now what we can see is that there is no overlap there. So the back leg does stick out, but it sticks out a little bit past the shirt here, so we'll need to adjust that. And like I was saying, next we will actually get into adding and editing this arm as well. So that's kind of what we're going to enter into now. Now we have the walk cycle. Now we're just going to kind of add some finer details to this. One thing I noticed was that I needed to adjust kind of the size of the shirt here. So I wanted to make that come out a little bit further so that at no point in my animation does that back leg really stick out. Now it comes really close there. So I might just move this out just a tiny bit more. The other thing that might be nice is if this kind of curves just a little bit. I kind of adjust the shape of the shirt somewhat, just because we had not actually really gotten into that before. So just kind of making a little bit more of a curve there at the bottom. And now it looks like that leg really stays behind the shirt there, so it does not poke out, which is makes this animation just a little more realistic. So as I said, we're going to take this body layer. All right, we can lock this back layer again. We want to just take the body. We're going to use our lasso tool and actually cut the arm right off of the body there. Okay, so we want to kind of go right up close by the shoulder, come all the way around the arm and the hand, and then make a circle and go all the way back to the beginning there. All right, now what we're going to do is we can really just go ahead and cut that arm right off. We are going to cut it, and then what we can do, actually what might be the better way to do things is to actually just copy it. We'll copy it for now. Okay, we're going to add a new layer, call this the arm. On this now we can go ahead and we'll paste down this arm selection. Okay, so now we have just that arm there on the arm layer, that first keyframe. I can go around these edges and I just want to erase everything except for the actual arm itself. Okay, so once I erase that bit, I could just use my selection arrow and I can click on these couple of bits around here. If I zoom in closer, that might make things a bit easier. So I need to kind of erase just this little section here, but I keep getting the whole selection. So I'm trying to just take out this part and not this entire part of the color here. Okay, so let's try and select this again. Still gives me the whole thing. Alright, so again, just trying to get really in tight with this. I think that if I click on this little line, it will let me delete that. Good. We could always draw a new arm as well, but for purposes of time, we'll see how close we can get this to erase. Okay, so that should work pretty well. We will go back to our actual body, and I'm going to just delete this from the original. So delete all these parts, and so I'm just clicking away and deleting. Then what I can do is kind of just take this point, bring it down and connect it to this other black point down here. Move that into place, and then I'm going to take my fill bucket and fill in that kind of remaining area. Okay, so we wanted to take this arm and convert it into a graphic, so I'm going to press F8 and convert this into an arm graphic, although I know I already had one from what I did earlier, so I'm going to call it arm1, and I'm going to move it into place. Okay, so that will do. Just move it over another smidge and zoom out a tiny bit. So what we're going to need to do to this arm actually is adjust the pivot point. So when you click on a graphic, you have this little bubble that appears in the middle, and that is the pivot point, or where it will rotate around. So if you want to take, you're going to actually click on this graphic and then try and click and drag that point away. So I'm not quite getting it here. We should be able to take that point and move it, but this seems to be being a little bit difficult at the moment. So I guess I'll come back to that. What we do want to do though is we want to make a couple of keyframes. Oh, actually, you know what the step is? I'm forgetting. It needs to be when we're on the transform tool. Okay, free transform tool, the blocks, and now we can take and move this pivot point Right, that was the step I was forgetting. Okay, so that pivot point, then we want to make that about the shoulder. That way when we go to rotate, it will cling to that corner. So we can rotate and do this animation much more easily when we have it clinging to that point. So I'm going to go ahead a bit. We're going to press F6 for a new keyframe on frame 8. All right, then we're going to go a little bit further down the line. We're going to go to keyframe 14. Also add another keyframe there, and then again at keyframe 21. Okay, trying to evenly space these about. So what we want now is the first position can be down by his side. Then next we want it to move slightly forward. And then on the next it should be slightly even more forward. And then now we should be slightly back again to the back position, and then one last keyframe on the end, and we'll actually move it back from its original kind of straight up and down position there. Okay, so now what we can do is we can add in some motion tweens between all these arm positions, and let's check out the results. So the arm swings forward, swings backwards. Okay, and let's watch that in preview mode. So arm swings forwards and backwards as he is walking. Okay, and the last thing we're going to do is add the head tilt, which is going to be relatively easy now that we've done the arm. Actually, what I'm going to start by doing is kind of collapsing the hat and head into one layer. If you were following along this tutorial before, we added the hat on a separate layer. But now we will go ahead, I'm going to cut that, so Window X, and just delete this hat layer because we don't really need it by itself. It'll make things easier to do the head tilt if the head and hat are on the same layer. So I'm going to Window V, paste this onto this layer, and get the hat into place. Maybe nudge it up just a little bit. All right, and now we want to take both of these shapes and turn them into a graphic. So we're going to call this the head, and really simply we just want to actually create the same keyframes here for the head as the arm. So I'm going to go right above that 8th one, press F6, right above this one, F6, and actually before we do that, very key actually, before you do that, you want to move that pivot point. Okay, so remember we are with our free transform tool. We're going to change this middle point, pivot point, to right where the middle of the neck would be. Okay, so now when we go to rotate the tilt of the head, we'll stick to that pivot point. All right, so initially now we can go in and do these keyframes, okay, because we've changed the pivot point. Otherwise, you're going to have to change the pivot point on every one of those keyframes. Okay, so moving down forward a little bit will be the head tilt, a little bit forward more on that next one, and I think that the head slightly shifted in position there. So it tilts forward, forward some more, and then on this frame it should be back, moving backwards. Okay, so just a little bit of a tilt, and then on the very last keyframe, this should be the original position. Okay, so I want to go ahead and I can copy this first frame and paste it at the end here. And so now what we should have is the head tilting forward and then tilting back. Okay, and so we'll go ahead and add tweens in between each of these keyframes. And now we will watch what we have here. Okay, so you can see I have a bit of an issue going on with my motion tweens. So I'm going to have to go back out here and explore what is happening with these. So I'm going to remove these tweens. I know that this part of the video is starting to add up in time, so I may or may not skip out here at some point. you know, looking back at it now, it looks like my pivot points were never really changed, and I think that that is the key issue. So I'm going to back up here, back up before I did all of these keyframes. So I want these keyframes to disappear. There we go. Alright, so back on this initial keyframe, we take the free transform tool and move the pivot point right to the center of the neck. Okay, so now when we go ahead and we press F6, I'm not sure why that moved back into that place. Let me try this again. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the pivot point. Alright, I'm going to unclick it and then go back, but it goes back. That is very odd. It should be staying in place so that when I go ahead and press F6, now when I rotate this a little bit more, it should see it was before, but now it does not seem to want to rotate on that pivot point. I thought that I had it there. Now it seems to be there. Okay, so it takes a little fumbling with, but we will get there. So that point is now good. I can see that this point is moved again, so I'm going to move it down here, and just so that I can make sure I get this head tilt good and accurate. Now again, a new keyframe. I'm going to move this point again, and now we should be on the upswing or the back tilt. Okay, and then the last frame should be the initial frame that we started with. So I'm going to copy this frame, go to the last one and paste it, and I believe now that this should be a little bit better. So rotates forward, forward some more, then back, and then back to the initial position. So let's just create one motion tween here, and let's see, still getting this very strange, the kind of movement from that point, and I think that it may be because that the rotation point did not change there again. So again, really important that we have this point be right down here in the middle of the neck. Okay, so that these continue to really rotate the right way. Okay, going back here now, I think that that's in the right place. It does not seem to quite be working. This might take a little bit more of messing with. Okay, now it seems to be moving way outside. And what I may attempt to do is take a look at even sometimes just quitting Flash, trying to reopen something will make a small kind of glitch like what seems to be happening for me right now. It seems to be very glitchy. I'm not sure why this is moving up and down like this, but I will take a quick pause and try and resolve this and then come back with another section.